Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to all of you, my dear students. I hope that you are doing well. I welcome you to the course of expository writing, which has the course code of HUM120. So you probably got the slight indication of what this course will be about. We'll be learning a specific form of writing that is basically used for exposing a concept, an idea, a procedure, an analysis, but the basic focus remains on exposing. That is something which we get from the term the expository writing. What we are going to discuss, I have given you an overview in the upcoming slides. So this is going to be the target that we'll be gradually and steadily covering within each lecture. I'll be talking about the introduction of expository writing, which is very much important because that's the way in which you're going to understand how to differentiate it from the other forms of writing. We'll proceed ahead and talk about the structure as well as the different types of essay. Essay is also one of the essential forms of expository writing. Of course, we have studied in our early schooling what essay writing is, what are its types, but one of its type is the expository type of essay that we are going to study also within these slides. Moving ahead, we're going to talk about the introduction to report writing, because one of the forms of this expository writing is writing a report. Then we'll be discussing its structure, its types, and once we have done it, we'll proceed ahead and talk about an overview of what technical communication is. What are the attributes, what are the characteristics, what are its types, what are the scenarios within which technical communication is used for communication. Then we'll proceed ahead and we'll talk about those essential tips through which you commence with the writing process. Of course, we have been trying to write stuff from very early ages. We learn how to write, and then of course connecting words to form phrases, clauses, learning the sentence structure, talking about the grammar. So we have learned so many techniques and so many basics of writing, but when it comes to the writing process, I'm referring to a thought process in which you plan what you're going to write. Then you start writing it, and then there is a stage within which you revise, you review, you edit, you proofread the content which you have just written. So that is basically the writing process, but we'll talk about it. Moving ahead, we're going to talk about the 7 C's of communication. That is also a very important concept that is essential for you people to learn. We're going to learn it, we're going to enjoy it, the things that are going to come, all the examples that are there within the slides, you're going to understand these things quite well, quite effectively by those scenarios which are provided, because once you will learn these things, only then you'd be able to incorporate it not only in your spoken communication but also in your written communication. So there, just for an understanding, for a quick preview of what is to come, it's like clarity, conciseness, concreteness, correctness, courtesy. These are the C's that we are going to cover within this course. Then we all know there are situations within which we are supposed to simply stand in front of the audience to present our ideas. And here, the presentation skills are very essential and important. It's not something that can be ignored, and that is why these presentation skills have also been made part of this course. So we are going to learn all those techniques in which we plan a presentation, we prepare for this presentation, and we finally deliver it for getting a positive feedback from our audience. Then if we talk about the next things which are also very much important and to a very good extent related to the expository form of writing, we're going to talk about the resume writing, resume as well as CV. Now, many of you would be wondering why these two names. We generally consider it as one and the same. Well, there is a difference. We are going to find it out when we'll go through these slides of resume writing and CV writing, and then you will realize what kind of thing out of these two is required in your scenario. Because just to give you a quick preview, resume is short, whereas CV is detailed. CV is used in a different context, whereas resume is used in a different scenario. So you will be able to determine this thing once you know the differences. Then, once your resume has been quite successfully screened and analyzed and has been selected, you will be called for an interview. That means that you will be simply standing, rather I would say sitting just like me, and on the opposite side, right now you are watching me, but there will be interviewers who will be watching you when you will be at my place, and then they're going to simply ask you to introduce yourself. So why do you want to join this organization? What are you expecting from us? And what makes you different from the others? So these are the kind of questions for which you have to prepare yourself. Rather, you have to prepare yourself. And if you're getting me right, if you know how to handle all those questions that will be coming your way, you'd be able to answer quite effectively. That can simply impress your interviewers, and you'll be getting the job that you are seeking. So that's why this thing is also quite important. Then proceeding ahead, we are quite well aware of the fact that I'm not pointing you. Right now you'll be wondering as though I'm pointing you specifically, as though you are the one who simply does this plagiarism or copy or pasting and then, claiming it to be your own writing. You'll be aware of the fact that there are many students who simply say, Sir, ye to maine khud likha hai. Madam, ye maine khud likha hai sab kuch. But they're able to figure it out that you have simply copy-pasted it from some source. So we're going to learn those techniques in which there is nothing wrong, there is no harm in taking some content from an external source, but you simply cite it. You simply mention it in an appropriate way that is acceptable internationally, because you are acknowledging the external sources of that content. Who's the actual author? So when you cite the name of that author whose work you are basically taking, that makes your own writing more authentic, more strong, more argumentative, more logical. So, there is cohesion and coherence within your writing. All these things, your writing becomes more credible, believable, and people who are going to read your content will simply trust you, because he or she is the person, you are the person who simply quotes everything that he or she is taking from. So that makes your writing or your speech or your communication more credible. So this is something, the art of referencing is also something that we are going to cover. We're going to talk about the referencing styles that are commonly used in an academic context, how you can do it, how to prepare a works cited page, bibliography. All these things will be covered within this course. And last but not least, if we talk about communication, it's not that as though you are a speaker, or let's say you're a writer, and on the other side there are listeners or readers, and you simply start creating information, you start transferring to the other person, and he or she would be able to understand it clearly and in the same way as you are expecting them to understand. There are certain things that are going to create a problem in the comprehension of the content that you have created. So in case it's a spoken content, there could be hurdles, as well as there could be written hurdles, hurdles that are basically affecting your writing also. For example, let's say if I just talk about one barrier, just for an understanding. So if I'm talking to you and all of a sudden there is a sudden breakdown of electricity or your internet connection, and all of a sudden the video starts buffering, streaming is basically affected. So that means that right now in this scenario, the internet has become a barrier, which is why my speech, or let's say my lecture, is something which has been blocked. It's not reaching you. So it is also one of those barriers which has affected this communication that was happening between you and me. Is that right? Are you getting me? Hopefully you are, because once we are done with it, now we can proceed ahead. You know the idea, you know the roadmap that we'll be taking within this course, and as you have gotten a clear idea, let's proceed ahead and talk about the expository writing. First, look at the points. They are here in front of you, and especially focus on the things that are in bold, especially the first word that is written in the first bullet point. So the type of writing that is used to expose something. So from this word of expose, we name this form of writing as the expository writing. The type of writing that is used for exposing concept, idea, thought, perspective, any procedure, process, analysis, All these things are exposed. They are brought into the forefront in front of the audience or in front of the readers, I would say, because it's a form of writing. So this is point number one. Then it's basically used for these functions. We provide some sort of information. We tend to explain an idea. If there is some sort of misunderstanding, again, this form of writing is used for clarification. And if some person has to provide a set of instruction, again, this form of writing is used for carrying out that function. If we talk about point number three, this form of writing is generally used in non-fiction prose. So what do we mean by non-fiction? Of course, something that is not fiction, because fiction is, those novels that you read, because they are based on fictional characters. They are imaginary. They are based on creative writing. These things are not for real. Generally, and in general, basically, expository writing is used when we have to state facts, statistics, graphical data, numerical data, for analysis, for interpretation, for an explanation. For these things, we use the expository writing. And some scenarios, some examples are also there in front of you. If you clearly analyze it, there are textbooks, there are academic essays, letters, manuals, and again you can see the report, news article, pamphlets, magazines, guidebooks. So that is why your outline has been crafted very carefully, so that all those things which are very much essential for you people to learn, especially within these 4 years, you will be given such kind of tasks by other instructors within which you may be required to write such things. So you would know how to simply draft, how to first of all do your planning, then how to draft, and finally how to finalize your document before your final submission. So that is why these things are essential, and expository writing are exemplified by these specific forms of writing. And last point, of course, reiterates the things that we have discovered. Everything is based on facts and evidence. Now let's proceed with the characteristics of expository writing. When we have to, understand this form of writing in more detail, these are some of the things which differentiate it from the other forms of writing. First thing is clarity. That means that you as a writer are not supposed to make things ambiguous for your readers to understand. You don't have to simply, keep things open for them to decide whether it's this that the writer wants to say or is it the other thing that the writer wants to say. You have to state things very clearly. No ambiguity should be there within that specific form of writing that you have simply drafted for your readers to read and for attaining information. Quite straightforward as well as quite easy. And we're going to learn how can we make things easy. Then there is a logical sequence. By logical sequence, there are very different ways within which you can understand this thing. Not that difficult. But the point here is that, of course, you begin from an introduction where you simply state what the content is about. Then there is a body within which you go into the details and all the things that you wish to explain to your readers. And lastly, you conclude, within which you restate the important points that you want your readers to remember. And in case you need some sort of CTA, and are you getting me what a CTA is? Any one of you would like to, first of all say it. You can, of course, comment on it if you like. But CTA, and if you are getting it quite right, CTA refers to call to action. If you want your readers to initiate some sort of action, it's not just limited to, let's say, agreeing with you or concurring with you. You want your readers to carry out and perform some sort of task. There will be situations that you will be reading that may be assigned to you in some sort of an assessment. And within that assessment, you may be asked to create a specific form of expository writing where you have to convince your readers to perform some action. So in that case, your conclusion should have that specific CTA that you want them to carry out, especially for you. That means that they agree with your point, but you got the idea, and so on and so forth. So when we talk about the logical sequence, your expository form of writing can have any of these scenarios. Let's say it could be based on problem solution form of writing, where you first of all state the problem, go into the detail, and then conclusion, which provides a set of solutions. Then it can be writing that is based on the comparison and contrast of two things. I hope that you are familiar with the idea of comparison and contrast. When we have to compare and contrast two things, that means that first we talk about their similarities and then we talk about their differences. That is compare and contrast. Then your logical sequence can also be crafted or created by writing, first of all, the causes of any phenomenon to be taking place, and then the effect, the repercussions of those causes. How are those causes affecting the general audience or the general surroundings? This is the cause and effect form of writing. What is the cause of global warming? What are the effects of global warming? What are the causes of pollution? What are the effects of this pollution that is there? So this is the way in which cause and effect form of writing is created. Then there is a chronological order. Are you familiar with the term chronology? Any one of you? Yes, I'm talking to you, by the way. You were thinking as though I'm not listening to you, or I'm not following you, but I am keeping an eye on you. So don't think as though I'm just here in the video. I am listening. And I'm expecting you to listen the same way as I am simply talking to you. So be careful, okay? So, chronological order. Chronological order basically refers to the temporal sequence within which you simply mention all the steps in which all the events took place. First of all, you woke up, then you got ready, then you simply caught the bus, then you traveled all the way to reach the university, then you reach your class, then you attended the first lecture, then you took a break. So do you see that temporal sequence within which things are moving? So although it's more like, your own story that I'm trying to narrate, but if you have to talk about some procedure, so again, if you are adding some temporal sequence within which first what happened, then what happened, then what happened. So this stepwise procedure is the chronological order, which means that the second step cannot occur without the first step. Then if we talk about description, that is also another way of creating a logical sequence within your writing. The third point is being objective and neutral. For understanding this thing, of course the explanation is there, but do think, how can a writing be objective? You'll be familiar with the exam format within which you say, यार objective बड़ा मुश्किल था. The subjective part बहुत मुश्किल था. Objective हो गए इधर उधर से पूछ के हैं. Sometimes these things happen. Objectives are easy. Why? Because the answer is the same. Objective is something general for which the answer or the conclusion is the same. But subjective is the place where there is a difference of opinion, where your personal preferences are there, where you can add your own opinion within the answer to the question. So this is the basic thing from which these terms have been created. Maybe many of you would not be aware of this fact. We have been using these terms for quite a while. Objective में ये, subjective में ये. But have you realized कि ये terms आई कहाँ से हैं? So objectivity means something that is universal, generic, general, impartial, where you all are on the same page. But subjective is the place where there can be a difference of opinion. You may have a different opinion. I may have a different, especially where your opinion has been asked. But when we say that this is objective and neutral expository writing, that means the space for providing your own personal opinion is gone, limited, narrowed, restricted. You have to focus on the objective part. You have to be impartial. You have to remain journal in terms of everything that you are talking within this writing. It has to be based on facts. It has to be based on statistics. This is the important thing that you have to keep in mind. So personal opinions and emotional language, it has to be avoided. It is not allowed. So there could be very rare occasions within which, if you think that the writing demands some sort of small piece of opinion to be given at the end, so there is a little space. Otherwise, in general, it has to be avoided. Keep that point in mind. And another important point is that it's a structured form of writing. So as I mentioned and connected it with a logical sequence also. There has to be a specific structure that we are going to see in the upcoming lecture also, in which I'll explain how an essay is written, or the one that is next to it, in which I will talk about how a report is supposed to be structured. So they all have a sequence, they have sections and subsections. So in a similar way, this form of writing is based on set of sections, and each section is different from the other. You have introduction, supporting details, and within these supporting details you provide some examples, you provide facts to strengthen your argument, and in conclusion, of course, you restate all these things. Now let's move ahead and see what are the other characteristics of expository writing. So the first one is the information, and by information I mean to say is that this form of writing, of course, is used for conveying a specific form of information to your target audience. Your purpose is to, raise the understanding of your readers. I guess not that difficult for you to understand. But the next point is very important, which will simply set you apart from the other writers of expository writing. Basically, what the second point is trying to tell you is that if you want to be a good writer, it's very important that you would have done some thorough research with respect to the nature of your audience. Because if you will know your audience, you will know whether they are high-tech, low-tech, or lay. Rather, in other words, I should say it as whether your audience or your readers are quite advanced kind of readers who are expecting technical terms, statistical data, valid proof, citations, or they are looking for very simple form of writing, for digesting any information that is there within the text. So if you are aware of these things, only then you would be able to structure your writing effectively so that it's appealing for that specific type of audience. So it's always good to, be aware of the background knowledge, their ages, their gender. If you are structuring your writing accordingly, it will be quite effective in conveying the information that you want them to understand. Get it? Then expository writing is used to cover a wide range of topics, and I'll be giving you examples in the upcoming slides, but some of the general ideas are like, for mentioning historical events, how they occurred, what were the circumstances, what were the causes, what was the effect, then some scientific facts if you wish to quote them, the analysis of data for the explanation of some process, how it takes place, how it begins, how it proceeds, how it concludes. You can talk about these things through this expository form of writing. Then, of course, one of the characteristics of the expository writing is that it's quite credible and quite convincing. You are able to convince your readers, and it has to be quite convincing. And how do we simply convince? How do we make it that credible? By using facts, statistics, you add numerical data, as well as by citing relevant sources. By citation, I'm referring to, reading some relevant information that's quite related to the work that you are doing, and you mention the name of those authors. According to them, this concept is like this. According to person A, this thing occurs in this way. These are the causes and effects of these things according to that person. When you are referring to them and you are citing them, you are making your writing more authentic, more strong. The reader will get an idea within his or her mind that this person is well read, well learned. He or she has done a lot of thorough research before writing this thing that he or she is presenting to me. This is a very important point. So all these things makes your writing convincing as well as credible. And of course, nothing has to be based on imaginary characters which are there within your writing. Rather, real persons, their examples, and the facts that they have quoted within their work. So you're getting the idea. Things are quite interrelated. You are getting the idea quite well. But these, after all, are the characteristics. And why am I telling you all these things in a bit detail? That in case some teacher, let's say, asks you regarding the basics, so you are supposed to tell these things in the same way. Rather, don't forget about something. And it's not just limited to, answering a specific question in the exam. Try to digest these things, absorb these things so that you can make them a permanent part of your writing. That is the essential thing, the actual learning outcome of teaching this thing to you. So If you are able to apply it within your expository writing, best. Good job. Let's proceed ahead and talk about the purpose of expository writing. The best part about this section is that you can also, witness in front of you is that I have the examples for you. So over here, we'll not just be talking about the purposes of expository writing, rather we'll be seeing actually how expository writing is being utilized within these scenarios. So when we talk about to inform the target audience or the readers, you can see that when a news article is basically written on some situation, so that article remains a form of expository writing. It is, especially looking at this scenario within which I have referred to the general election, when they took place, who were the parties who were competing, and which one of the parties simply won by a difference, by a strong margin. So all these things when are mentioned, so these are written in the form of expository writing. So this news article is a very clear example of one of the functions and one of the examples of expository writing, because it's performing the role of informing your readers. Then expository writing is also used for explaining some sort of process. So the reason why I've chosen photosynthesis is that, as far as I remember, it's something that we have studied in our earlier classes. One way or another, in our earlier science classes, of junior classes I'm referring to, are the ones within which we know a slight indication of, in which, sunlight is used by the plants for, converting carbon dioxide and water into glucose, and byproducts are also there, within which water is also there, and oxygen is the most essential thing that is produced by these plants using the sunlight, chlorophyll that is found within these plants. So instead of going to the science, the purpose is that all the process that I've just explained. See, so this purpose of explaining the things is done through the expository writing. That's why I've given this example. Moving ahead, if we talk about description. Description is a very, strong word. You should be well aware of when this word is used by you as well as within some question. So for describing something, now you should be aware of the fact that it's a very important word, because it refers to helping your readers to visualize objects as well as places, because you will be helping your readers in visualizing through only your writing. Things would not be there, let's say for a while. You're not using any AV aids, visual aids. Let's put them aside. Your only source of conveying information as well as helping your readers to visualize all these things is your writing. So that means that you have to be very much conscious in terms of the choice of words that you use. We'll be looking into the choice of words. They are very much important when it comes to the use of expository writing for, helping your readers to visualize these things. But a brochure, of any housing society. There are so many housing societies that are there within your surroundings. You see the ads in the newspapers. So analyze the way within which, they simply describe the beauty, where there is located, their distance from the airport, from the main, boulevard or avenues. So this is the way in which you are, helping your readers to visualize where this society is located, what's the distance of the society from the airport, from the main markets, from the main city, from the main town. So you have to be very specific in terms of using the words which can help the reader to imagine this society. They're able to reconstruct the whole society within their mind. As I mentioned earlier, you're not letting them see the picture, that 3D modeling of that society for now. You're making them imagine these things through your writing. That's the description. The ideal description, that is done through the expository writing. Okay, if you have to provide some sort of guidance regarding some steps, some instruction, and for that I have given the example of a recipe book. So many of you, I'm not differentiating boys because they are also quite good chefs, but somehow generally we say that ladies, women, girls, they're quite good in terms of handling the stuff in the kitchen. So recipe books are there for you. They're quite useful, they're quite helpful. And rather, instead of recipe books, I would say that now you people take help from the videos also, the blogs that are there on the websites. So all these things, these how-to guides, these instructional manuals, these tutorials, these step-by-step guides, all these things are the examples of expository writing. When you are telling your readers a set of steps through which they have to perform a task, first you have to do this, then you have to do this. Lastly, when these things are ready, take a break of the specific number of minutes, and then you'll get this final product. So the way you are specifying these things in the form of instructions, you are guiding your readers through this specific form of expository writing. And lastly, we're talking about the data analysis. Of course, for this purpose, we also use expository writing because the graphs, pie charts, tables would be there, but you will also be providing their explanation for your readers, especially with reference to the kind of information or their expectation, what they are anticipating from you to get at the end of these pie charts and tables. Even in the future when you will be, carrying out your own research, working on projects. So your examiner will be expecting from you to explain these things. They will not only just get impressed by the pie charts or the diagrams that you have just added within your writing, within your project. They will be expecting from you that you simply explain this pie chart, explain this graph, explain these diagrams that you have added, this table, make it easier for them to understand. And for this purpose, what you will be doing, you will be analyzing the data using expository writing. There are some other things that you have to keep in mind also with reference to the purpose. You use expository writing for persuading your audience. So this target audience can achieve a particular viewpoint only when you have stated everything with clarity, with proofs, with evidence, and with statistics. So if we look and read the point, target audience can achieve a particular viewpoint, such as an article on the benefits of regular exercise and walking. So if you have written this, article, you are basically persuading your audience that this is a good thing and this is something which everyone should adopt and simply make it a part of their life permanently. So for that, again, expository writing can be used for persuading your audience. In the upcoming few lectures, I'll be telling you the difference between argumentation as well as persuasion, because in general we see them as one and the same thing. To a very good extent they are the same, but still there are some differences, and that's why you need to know how to persuade the audience as well as how to present an argument before the audience. Then we also use expository writing for educating. For example, the purpose of mentioning some historical events. You can think of any country, including your own, and think of all the historical events which have taken place. So when you narrate them, your purpose is to develop critical thinking abilities within your readers. So that is also one of the important purposes of expository writing. Not just by reading, but by writing this expository writing, especially for this purpose, when you are narrating different historical events, that is certainly going to develop critical thinking. So that is also another important purpose. The next point, I guess, quite easy, but has to be mentioned. That's why the purpose of expository writing is, making things quite clear, removing all the ambiguity and confusion. When you are stating facts, when you are telling things right from the start to the very end, and also restating them in the conclusion, that means that you are not, keeping anything unturned. You have turned everything, you have explained everything to your readers. For recording data, for saving the data, for publishing it, as well as sharing it with the rest of the world, you also use this expository writing, as we see within research papers as well as journals. So many of you would have read it. For the others, you will be reading them, as well as I see a beautiful day in our life, everyone's life, within which you all have your research paper published with respect to all the projects that you have done. Inshallah, that's my hope. So with that, we come to the conclusion, and just restating the things that we have done. We have talked about the expository writing. So now, in case anyone asks you, I don't think you will have any trouble. You don't have to rely on Google or any other AI source for finding out the solution, you will be aware of the fact that what basically is expository writing, and you will be able to simply explain the definition to any of your friend who simply misses the lecture and simply asks you, यार उस lecture में sir ने क्या कहा था, तो मुझे बता दो ज़रा in short. So you'd be able to explain to him or her quite well. Then the characteristics, to remember all the characteristics that I've just talked about. You can rewind the video to see if you have simply forgotten some of the points and what was the purpose. Everything explained quite well. But still, if there is anything missing, rewind the video, see anything, and in case I was a little fast, you can slow down. Every option is available for you. Hopefully you have enjoyed the lecture. I did also. And in front of you, I was imagining all of you sitting in front of me. It's not that as though I'm just thinking as though I am all alone. I have simply enjoyed the company, and I look forward to see you in my next lecture also. Looking forward to see you watching me in the next video, because in the next one I have another interesting topic for you people to understand as well as practice. We're going to talk about the essay writing. So see you in the next lecture. Assalamu alaikum.